The world is full of bad habits, some of which are indeed mine. Guys, I am in a bad habit of feeding my epic champions, so today we are going to go over 5 to 10 epic champions that I myself underrated and fed on multiple occasions. What's up, everybody? I am Felra, sailing the seas of Raid Shadow Legends, here to bring you epic champions that you should not overlook. Let's get started. Well, I talked about Philia already, and I talked about using the Marooned already, so today we're going to bring out Fenshi, alright? So Fenshi is a champion that I'm currently using in Shadowkin Faction Wars, and he's kind of cool. So I underrated this guy. He says he's an attack champion, right? He kind of has a relatively high attack, so you would think he's a nuker. He's actually not a nuker, he's a debuffer. On his A1, Hate Blades, attacks one enemy 3 times. Each hit has a 30% chance, books to a 40% chance of placing a 30% decreased speed debuff for 2 turns. On his A2, Nowhere to Run, attacks one enemy 3 times. Each hit has a 50% chance of decreasing the target's turn meter by 15%. That books up to a 75% chance. That is on a 3-time hitter, of course. And then the A3, Killer's Bile, attacks one enemy 2 times. Each hit places a 5% poison debuff on the target for 3 turns. Will ignore 10% of the target's defense for each poison debuff on the target. Hey you, stop right there. Click the link in the description below to get a free Corrado, as well as Fane, Ugo, and Vergus as you level up your account in Raid. Here's exactly how to do it. Log out of Flareon Play on PC and uninstall. Click the link in the description below and register with a brand new email. Log in and complete the tutorial. You'll find Corrado in your inbox, as well as Fane, Ugo, and Vergus as you level up. If you're looking for a great start in Raid, this is your chance. Make sure you get your free Corrado as well as 3 free epics by clicking my link right away. Guys, because of all these triple hitters, he is a fantastic, and double hitters in case of his A3, right? He's a fantastic candidate for cruelty, which is very good in Shadowkin Faction Wars. He's got decreased speed. He's got turn meter pushback, which is great against the boss because the boss on the final level will massively increase his turn meter, right? And then he's got poisons. So a really nice debuffing, turn meter controlling champion in Fenshi here. I have him at 50. Probably don't need to 60 him. We will see. We will see. Shadowkin Faction Wars is open today, so, you know, we may have to end up 60ing him. We will see. And next on the list, also from the Shadowkin faction, it's Tomoe here. Tomoe is a interesting champ. On her A1, a stab and grab, attacks one enemy, has a 30% chance of stealing one random buff from the target. Not too bad at all. On the A2, Bamboozle, attacks all enemies, has a 75%, books to 100% chance of placing a 50% decrease attack debuff for 2 turns, so providing some protection for your team, or at least some damage reduction. Then on her A3, places a counterattack buff on a target ally for 2 turns, places a counterattack buff for 3 turns instead if the ally is from the Shadowkin faction, then fills the turn meters of all allies by 15% and places a 30% increased crit damage buff on all allies for 2 turns. Also places a 30% increased crit rate buff for 2 turns on all allies from the Shadowkin faction. So increased crit damage, increased crit rate, and counterattack. It's all very solid buffs, right, on her A3. Then her passive. Her passive is my favorite part of her kit. Brethren increases all heals and turn meter fill effects by 20% when used on allies from the Shadowkin faction. If there are multiple champions on the team with this skill, only one will activate. Guys, the ultimate Shadowkin, right, is going to be, well, first Mikage, but then Ninja, right? And Ninja on his A1 here attacks one enemy, 45% chance, books to a 60% chance of placing a 60% decreased defense debuff for 2 turns. Also fills this champion's turn meter by 15% when used against bosses. So Tomoe is going to be boosting your Ninja. Also, she will boost Lady Kimi. So Lady Kimi has a turn meter fill on all allies on a 4-turn cooldown as well. So she's going to boost Lady Kimi, and then of course she'll boost herself because she has a turn meter fill effect on her A3, which is pretty cool. So this passive, it's kind of like a built-in Journal of Necrodos, right? It's a really nice part of her kit. So Tomoe is definitely on there for epics that you should not underrate for Faction Wars. Another one that I really like is Duke the Pierced, okay? So Duke the Pierced, A1, Mad Chopper, attacks one enemy 2 times. Each has a 30% chance of placing a 50% decreased accuracy debuff for 2 turns. A2, Lunatic Outburst, attacks all enemies, has a 75% chance, books to a 100% chance of placing a 50% decreased attack debuff for 2 turns. Also has a 75% chance of placing a 60% decreased defense debuff for 2 turns on each critical hit. Then on the A3 here, places Shrieking Display, places a provoke debuff for 1 turn on the target enemy. Also has a 75% chance of placing a provoke debuff for 1 turn on 2 random enemies, places a 30% reflect damage buff on this champion for 2 turns, and an unkillable buff on this champion for 1 turn. I don't have him in any gear, but I had him in regen. The unkillable is super good. He's, again, going to reduce the damage your team takes, as well as provide decreased defense and some crowd control with the provokes, right? I like Duke the Pierce. I think he's a cool champion for the Orc faction crypt. And, you know, I try to avoid spending resources where I don't have to. All these champions work at level 50 for Faction Wars, right? Dur the Hungerer, moving into the Demonspawn crypt. I don't think Dur is exactly underrated, but he is certainly an interesting champion. His A1, Odious Bulk, attacks one enemy, has a 30% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn. His A2, Cannibal Litany, places a 30% reflect damage buff on all allies for 2 turns and a 15% continuous heal buff on all allies for 1 turn, then heals all allies by 15% of their max HP. So he has a heal, continuous heals, and reflect damage on a 3-turn cooldown. Very, very good. Then on his A3 here, Hungry for More, revives 2 random allies with 50% HP, then fills their turn meters by 50% on a 4-turn cooldown. Is a good epic revive, right? He is one of three now Demonspawn revivers. So you either need him or a legendary in order to have a reviver for that faction, which is going to be almost essential, right? Almost essential. It makes everything so much easier if you have a reviver. Now, the next one is going to be a champion that I fed and regret feeding now. It's also going to be from the Shadowkin. If you can't tell, I'm struggling with Shadowkin Faction Wars at the moment. It's going to be Kinagashi. Now, Kinagashi is the only Shadowkin reviver. Her A1, Leaping Sword Art, attacks one enemy 2 times. Oh my gosh, that sounds like something from an anime. Leaping Sword Art. Attacks one enemy 2 times. Each has a 30% chance of decreasing the target's turn meter by 10%, which is pretty darn good. That books up to a 40% chance. The A2 teams up with a random ally to attack a single enemy, so she's got an ally attack. Also fills the turn meters of all allies by 15%. Again, comboing great with Tomoe, right? On a 3-turn cooldown is very good. Then her A3 here revives an ally with 50% HP and 50% turn meter. Also places a 60% increased defense buff on the ally for 2 turns on a 4-turn cooldown. Kinagashi, a super cool champion, and she's the only Shadowkin reviver, so she has inherent value that way as well. Taragi the Frog is another one that I regret feeding. Let's check the Dwarves. So, okay, so as far as Dwarves go, there are a couple here that I really like that are kind of maybe outside the beaten path. One is Canelia. I had a Canelia and used a Canelia for a while. Her A1, Surprising Swiftness, attacks one enemy, has a 40% chance, books to a 50% chance of increasing the cooldown of one of the target's skills by 2 turns at random, which is a very powerful A1 for an epic. It's very similar to Armon's A1. The A2, Piece of the Deep, has an 80% chance of placing a sleep debuff on all enemies for 1 turn. Whenever an enemy loses a sleep debuff placed by this skill, has a 50% chance, and that books to a, I believe that's a 70% chance of replacing it with a fear debuff for 1 turn instead. So she has an AoE sleep with an AoE fear, and then her A3 is what makes her so unique. Places a sleep debuff on an ally for 1 turn, heals that ally by 50% of their max HP, and fills their turn meter by 50% whenever the sleep debuff expires or gets removed. Heals that ally by 100% and completely fills their turn meter if the sleep debuff is lost due to taking damage from an enemy. So she's got control in her A1 and her A2, and then healing in her A3, and then she has ally speed in all battles by 18% as well. Another one is Grizzled Jarl. So Grizzled Jarl is another one that I could have used for Faction Wars that I fed, right? Massive Halberd here on the A1, attacks one enemy, has a 35% chance, books to a 50% chance of placing a 100% heal reduction debuff for 2 turns. Good for Amius as well, right? But then the A2 places a 60% increased defense buff on all allies for 2 turns, places a block debuffs buff on all allies for 1 turn. That's on a 3-turn cooldown, fully booked. And then the A3, Earth Stomp attacks all enemies, has a 75% chance, books to 100% chance of placing a 50% decrease attack debuff on all enemies for 2 turns, destroys each target's max HP by 30% of the damage inflicted. Guys, these epics are invaluable when you're doing your faction wars. Now, as far as faction wars itself is concerned, you really have 2 options, and one of them is you wait until your gear is at the level where you just need the champions, and the other is you can push faction wars while you're also developing your roster and everything else. I did the latter option, so now it's just a matter of collecting the Pokemon and slapping some gear on them so that I can do the stuff that I need to do. But a lot of people, most people in fact, elect for the do it as you go strategy. I'm not here to champion either one, but they're both options. I'm sure people will let me know in the comments which one they prefer. Now, another, faction I'm really struggling with is the Lizardmen, and I'm not entirely sure what I could do with here. Like, I do regret feeding my Skathix. So I got a Skathix, and I fed him. And his A1 attacks one enemy, has a 30% chance of placing a 30% decreased speed debuff for 2 turns. His A2 attacks all enemies, has a 75% chance, books to 100% chance of stealing 1 random buff from each enemy, which is great. And then his A2 on a 4-turn cooldown, fully booked, removes all debuffs from all allies, then places a block debuffs buff and a shield buff on all allies for 2 turns. The shield buff is equal to 20% of this champion's max HP. I don't know why I fed this guy. That was absolutely stupid, right? And then his passive here, Last Gasp, on a 6-turn cooldown, places a block damage buff on this champion for 1 turn whenever their HP drops below 30%. Do not make the mistake I did of feeding that guy. Neither Jareg. Jareg has ally protection and increased defense. I don't know why I fed him either. I guess I was just super excited for some sort of legendary. His A1 has decreased attack at a pretty good chance. I believe that's a 60% chance of placing a decreased attack. And then his passive has heals, places a 15% continuous heal buff on an ally for 1 turn whenever an ally loses 20% of their max HP in 1 hit. That doesn't have a cooldown, so it's just constantly happening, right? So definitely don't underrate those epics. Lizardman doesn't have great epics. Gorgon is another one who's pretty good. Perfect Veil, increase attack on all allies whose attack is higher than their defense, and then block defense and increase defense on all allies whose defense is higher than their attack. She has a heal and then a shield, kind of a weak heal and a weak shield, but that's all right. And then his A1 is just him hurling a rock. It's hilarious. Attacks one enemy, has a 30% chance of increasing the duration of a random buff on a random ally by 1 turn, which is okay, right? So he's all right as well as far as lizards go. Slixus is okay as a void nuker. He can do some damage here. And Jizo as well. He's all single target stuff, but he can do some work as well. Guys, I think, again, those are the 3 crypts I haven't covered, right? As far as crypts that I have covered go, using the Marooned, I've talked about him a lot. Ugo is great. Dudan the Runic is a cool protector. He has taunt, strengthen, and counterattack. My goodness, he still has Ugo's symbols, but he's got a shield on an AoE, and then he has a A1 cleanse, which is super good, right? An A1 cleanse is amazing. I've talked about Ultimate Gaelic recently. He is awesome. I've talked about Cryoden before. I don't think anybody underrates Rectodroth, so, definitely don't be sleeping on her. I think that's pretty much it. I mean, I still have to do Lizardmen Faction Wars, so we may be getting a rare champions that carried me through Faction Wars video sometime soon. Guys, let me know what your favorite underrated champions are in the comments below. I have been Felrus, sailing the seas of Raid Shadow Legends, and I'll see you in another video.